Carpenter's The Fog. Not that crappy remake. On the 21st of April, pretty recently, we shot this episode with a fire. Many locations filmed. Los Angeles, California. Inverness, Bodega Bay, Point Reyes, also known as Antonio Bay. Pay attention. You, Tubby, put down that s'mores. Yeah, that's much better. For example, John Carpenter shot this opening campfire scene on a soundstage at Raleigh Studios in Hollywood, California. And I'm Sean Clark. Welcome to Horror's Hallowed Grounds. 1, 2, 3, 4! So today we're starting in Los Angeles, California, off of Laurel Canyon Boulevard at the Canyon Country Store. Right behind me is the store that in the beginning of the film, the telephone started ringing and all kinds of craziness goes on. And inside, a lonely worker gets startled by all the mayhem. Now we're going to head to Northern California, take a closer look at some of the other locations. So now we're in beautiful Point Reyes, California, and right behind me is all that remains of the seagrass. Okay, no it isn't, it's just a shipwreck we found, but it's pretty cool. It's Point Reyes, it's the fog, that rocks. Anyway, this is right off Sir Francis Drake Boulevard, and right down Sir Francis Drake is Stevie Wayne's house from the fog. Let's go take a look at that. So right behind me is Stevie Wayne's house from the fog. This is located just off of Sir Francis Drake Boulevard in Inverness, California. So it's actually down there where Ty Mitchell, AKA Andy in the film, came running up with a piece of driftwood to show his mother. Unfortunately, it's a private residence, and we weren't allowed to go inside. But as you can see, it's changed quite a bit over the years. The structures on top of the roof and everything. But it is a piece of cinematic history. And there's something even cooler across the street. So right across the street from Stevie Wayne's house is the road that leads up to the church in the film. Now, the church in the film is actually shot in Sierra Madre, California. The church up here is St. Columba's Episcopal Church. But the cool thing about this road is the cross is still here, as seen on film. So one thing that's really interesting is the cross looks like it's made of metal. This looks like rust, but this orange stuff you see here is actually an orange moss. But it gives it a really cool rustic look. It's a little wonky. Yeah, the wind's kind of blowing it there. But it's been here for a long time and hopefully it'll last. This is a cool piece of cinematic history and probably means something to religious people too, I think. So we're on Bear Valley Road right now. This is where Tom Atkins drives up and down and picks up Jamie Lee Curtis hitchhiking. It was up and down this road that they shot all those scenes, except for the interior of the cabin of the truck was all poor man's process shot on a stage at Raleigh Studios. The exact spot of where he picks her up isn't known, but it was definitely on this road here, which connects to Sir Francis Drake Boulevard just up ahead. And that's where the restaurant is which had the bar from the film, as well as the ceremony. So now we're at the Olema farmhouse. This is where the ceremony took place in the fog. This entryway here has changed a bit, but it's the same entrance that they come in to check out how the sculpture looks for the festivities for the big Antonio Bay celebration. Over here, this is where the bleachers were set up, where the townspeople could watch the ceremony take place. So right back here, this would be where the sculpture was that they presented to the townspeople. And over here would have been where the stage was set up, where Janet Leigh gave the speech celebrating Antonio Bay's anniversary. You can see the awning behind me was there in the film. It's changed a little bit, 30 some odd years, but it's all still there. So this is where the station wagon was parked. Behind me, this is the Olema Liquor and Deli. It's changed a little bit over the years. Like this door behind me used to be a window. The door next to it was originally there, as was the window over there. Some other things have changed as well. This used to be a driveway in between the two buildings, but now they've connected them. But inside here is actually the farmhouse bar and restaurant. And it was inside this bar that they shot the interiors of the bar scenes where Jamie Lee Curtis and Tom Atkins have a drink, and he calls Stevie Wayne at the radio station.
Repeating this bulletin from the Coast Guard. Be on the lookout for the seagrass.
So now we're on Sir Francis Drake Boulevard. This is the road that leads to Point Reyes Station, which is the lighthouse from the fog. We're braving all the elements. It's pretty darn windy out here, but this is awesome because this is the road Adrienne Barbeau drove to the lighthouse. Stevie Wayne. Well, anyway, it's a little bit of a walk to the lighthouse from the parking lot. It's about a 15-minute walk. And windy conditions like this, where it's freezing ass cold, ain't exactly fun. Especially if you're an idiot who wore shorts. But how awesome is that? That's the opening shot. This is the opening shot of the fog. Actually, all the stuff in the foreground, you see the trees and stuff, as it pans up, those were actually faked. That was put in the foreground of the shot to make it look like trees and stuff. Stinson Beach behind me. So this is the area where Adrienne Barbeau pulls up in her car, parks here, gets out, and then heads towards the lighthouse. So we've made the long trek up here to Point Reyes Station, the lighthouse right below. And unfortunately, they will not let anybody walk down the stairs down to the lighthouse. So this is as close as we're gonna get today. Due to high winds, can you believe it? I think they're just being touchy. So now we're at Drake's Beach, and right behind me is the spot where Andy finds the gold coin that turns into the piece of driftwood. Let's go take a look. So Andy comes across this way, and he heads along here and walks down to go find what he saw reflecting over here near the end. So it's down in this area where more than likely Andy discovered the gold coin had turned into the piece of driftwood. The exact spot isn't certain. A lot of these rocks look the same, but it was definitely in this general vicinity. So now we're in Bodega Bay, California. This is famous for Alfred Hitchcock's The Birds. Right behind me was the restaurant from the famous scene with Tippi Hedren, and they get attacked. Well, it's changed a great deal since the 60s. In fact, in the 90s, this place was completely remodeled. Anyway, this is also the area where Tom Atkins and Jamie Lee Curtis walked along the dock here to go talk to Hank about the seagrass and the whereabouts of the men aboard.
Pulled out of here at 4:15 yesterday. It's the last I saw.
Al said 7:30 right here.
The one thing that's a bit of a mystery about this spot is why Carpenter would have come all the way to Bodega Bay, which is an hour or two away from the other locations in Northern California, to shoot a scene on a dock that he probably could have got anywhere on the shore. My guess is the connection to Hitchcock's The Birds. Bodega Bay's become pretty famous for that film and that film alone. Not too many people here remember The Fog was even shot here. Nonetheless, this is an important location in the film and can't be left out for us hardcore fans. So right behind me is where Janet Leigh and Nancy Loomis stopped the station wagon because they saw the fog rolling in town. Then they turned down the corner here in front of the Western Saloon and made their escape to the church. This is located in Point Reyes, California. So now we're down at the other end of the street looking in the opposite direction. This is where Tom Atkins and Jamie Lee Curtis pull up this way. They stop the truck here as they see the fog coming down the street towards them. They then back up in reverse, head off into this direction, and then try to escape to the church. The church is actually in Sierra Madre, California, and that's where we're gonna head next. So now we're in Sierra Madre, California, at the Episcopal Church of the Ascension. This church was built in 1885, and in the movie it looks like it's supposed to be out in the middle of nowhere. Well, it's in the middle of a neighborhood and a busy street. If you go around this side here, there used to be a driveway here. It's actually a dirt driveway, and that's where Janet Leigh and Nancy Loomis drove up in the station wagon. They drove in this direction over here, and they parked just about where this fountain is now placed. They both get out of the station wagon and they head around back.
It's historical. Our ancestors are buried there.
Cost a lot.
Come on, Sandy, so?
So it's right here where Janet Leigh and Nancy Loomis enter the church. Every time you see somebody going into the church in the film, it's from the rear, not the front. There's no doorknob. Not a good sign.
Hello?
Another bad sign.
So this is the actual front door of the church. It isn't used in the film. They always enter from the rear, but this is what it looks like, and this is where we see Blake heading in this direction during the film. The film Return of the Living Dead Part 2 was filmed here as well. The stage right behind me is where Suzanne Schneider gets bit on the head by Tom Matthews. And what? Oh, dude, excuse me, sir. The church is closed. We're filming right now.
Shh. Can't you see I'm trying to pray here? Praying for you to get off your ass and do a Nightmare on Elm Street 2 episode, Mr. Clark.
Oh, dude. Hey, Rustler, how you doing? Bro, you know you need to respect the boundaries of restraining order. I mean...
Hey, man. I was here first, and we're in a church. And this falls under God's law. So not that I'm really that interested, but what are you guys doing here?
We're doing The Fog.
Oh, wasn't that like a Karen Carpenter movie?
John Carpenter, but pretty close. Yeah.
Well, regardless, the movie sucked.
Well, the remake sucked. I mean, the original's kind of a classic.
What about some of my other horror titles? Sometimes They Come Back, cult classic, Stephen King. Vamp, Grace Jones bit me on the neck, made me a vampire. Died twice, still lived at the end. Hello. And what about, like, Amityville?
Well, you know what? Actually, Scream Factory is doing an Amityville box set.
Nice! Bring on Next Generation.
Oh, actually, they're only doing the first 3. I mean, come on, dude. Next Generation sucked. I mean, it didn't even have the house in the movie. A mirror? Come on.
You got a point there. But none of that's going to matter, Sean, when my movie comes out. Black Asylum.
What the hell is Black Asylum?
Nothing much, just an all-star horror movie cast of one of the most killer horror films ever.
Dude, no, please tell me that you did not come here to interrupt our filming just to pimp your new horror film.
I would never show up here, like, stalk you in a church, just to pimp my new film, Black Asylum.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
We're done with you, bro. We're leaving. Let's get it.
I didn't even get into Kickstarter. Fans could go on to Kickstarter, and
dude.
it could be a movie by and for the fans. I say, F the suits. I say we make a movie old school style and watch a real filmmaker bust it out.
It's 12 midnight, and we've just started into the witching hour. This is Stevie Wayne, on top of the world.
So it's right here where director John Carpenter, playing the handyman in the film, ties the rope to the bell tower, shuts off the light here, and then heads in this direction, shutting down the church for the evening. He goes towards the back door, shuts off another light over here, then heads across the stage to get to the last set of switches, shuts these down, which turns off all the main lights of the church, then heads over to Father Malone's chamber. Now, on the other side of this door is a room they call the sanctuary. Unfortunately, we're not allowed access to this room. This is where they keep their robes and candelabras and things like that. But I did take a look at it, and it looks nothing like the room they used in the film, which was actually a set built on Raleigh Studios. So it's right here where the climax of the film takes place. You might recognize the windows behind me, the stained glass windows. These are the ones that you see the arms punching through. That's Tommy Lee Wallace, who played the ghost. He was also the production designer. So anything that needed to be broken was always him because he knew how to break it, much like in Halloween where he doubled Michael Myers breaking through doors and the closet and everything. When you see the hands breaking through the stained glass windows, it's primarily this window here shot 3 different times from 3 different angles. The dead giveaway is the word body you can see the text on the wall. Now, they use this very pane every time. They just kept replacing it, I guess, with a dummy window and hands coming through it in different angles. The second time you see a hand come through a window, though, they did do it from this window over here. Also the bottom pane. Now, you can see the word mother in that shot as well. So that's how you can distinguish between the two. These 3 here were not touched at all. So anyway, Father Malone takes the cross of gold and he walks to about here, where he then looks ahead and he sees Blake standing there waiting to receive his prize. So it's right about here where Blake and Father Malone have their final confrontation. Blake is standing right about here. He grabs onto the cross and they kind of do this for a long time. And it gets really bright and suddenly he's gone. That's it. That's pretty much the movie. That's not quite the movie, because let's face it, 6 must die, and Father Malone was the final conspirator.
To the ships at sea who can hear my voice, look across the water into the darkness. Look for the fog.
Why me? I mean, why is Russell always stalking me? Elm Street 2. Black Asylum. Oh, man. Black Asylum. Dis down the street. Dis down the street? Yo, dis down the street. What up, bitch? But there is a church up there. It's Saint motherfuckers in the his. Okay. Along this area here, all the bleachers were set up. I'm being attacked by a bee. But along here, Point Reyes, Inverness. But had to burp. Had to do it, bro. Couldn't help it. Let's try it again. Been doing the night. All right. Can't tire fucking. Sorry. Church. Let's do that again. What? Black Asylum.
It's gonna be so sick, so scary. Music, everything about it's gonna be dope.
And on the 21st of April, Boba Fett. Boba Fett, where? But it leads to a real church, St. Columba's Episcopal Church. And then a big truck came by, and God felt his mighty wrath.